In this chapter, we learn about the Bell Beaker Phenomenon and its role in Chalcolithic Iberia. The Beaker culture was present in Iberia during the Calicolithic Era. Gordon Childe interpreted the presence of its characteristics artifact of the intrusion of the missionaries expanding from Iberia along the Atlantic coast, spreading knowledge of Mediterranean copper metallurgy. Stephen Sheenahan interpreted their artifacts as belonging to mobile culture elite imposing itself over the indigenous substrate populations. Similarly, Sangmeister interpreted the Beaker folk, Glockenbeculate, as small groups of highly mobile traders and artisans. Christian Stram used the term Bell Beaker Phenomenon as a compromise to avoid the term culture. The Bell Beaker artifacts, at least in their early phase, are not distributed across a continuous areal, as in its usual archaeological cultures, but are found in insular concentrations scattered across Europe. Their presence is not associated with a characteristic type of agriculture or of buried customs. However, the Bell Beaker culture does appear to coalesce in a coherent agricultural culture in the later phase. More recent analysis of the Beaker phenomenon, published since the 2000s, have persisted in describing the origin of the Beaker phenomenon as arising from a synthesis of elements representing an idea and style uniting different regions with different culture, traditions, and backgrounds. Archaeogenetics studies of the 2010s have been able to resolve the migrationist versus diffusionist question to some extent. The study of by Olade et al. 2017 found only limited genetic affinity between individuals associated with the Beaker complex in Iberia and in Central Europe, suggesting that migration played a limited role in its early spread from Iberia. However, the same study found that the further dissemination of the mature Beaker complex was more strongly linked to migration. The spread and fluidity of the Beaker culture back and forth between Rhine and its origin source in the peninsula may have introduced high levels of steep related ancestry, resulting in a near complete transformation of the local gene pool within a few centuries, to the point of replacement of about 90% of the local Mesolithic Neolithic paternal lineages. The origin of the Bell Beaker artifact itself has been traced to the early 3rd millennium. The earliest examples of the maritime Bell Beaker design have been found at the Tagus estuary in Portugal, radiocarbon dated to circa 28th century BC. The inspiration of the maritime Bell Beaker is argued to have been small and earlier Copes beakers that have impressed decoration and which are found widely around the Tagus estuary in Portugal. Turk has recorded late Neolithic precursors in northern Africa, such arguing the maritime style emerged as a result of seaborne contact between Iberia and Morocco in the first half of the 3rd millennium BCE. In only a few centuries of the maritime spread, by 2600 BC, they had reached the lower Rhine estuary and further upstream into Bohemia and beyond Elbe, where they had merged with Côte d'Ivoire culture, as also the French coast and Provence, and upstream the Rhine into the Alps and the Danube. A significant Calicolithic archaeological site in Portugal is the Castro of Vila Nova de São Pedro. Other settlements from this period include Petra do Ouro and Castro of Zembujal. Megaliths were created during this period, having started earlier during the late 5th and lasting until the early 2nd millennium BC. The Castro Velho del Freixo de Numeo in Vila de Nova Fox Coa municipality was populated from about 3000 to 1300 BC. The Cerro de Castro do Santo Justa in Alcutum is dated to the 3rd millennium BC between 2400 and 1900 BC. It is also the period of great expansion of megalithism, with its associated collective burial practices. In the early Chalcolithic period, their cultural phenomenon, maybe of religious undertones, expands along the Atlantic regions and through the south of the peninsula. Additionally, it's also found in virtually all European Atlantic regions. In contrast, most of the interior and Mediterranean regions remain refractory to this phenomenon. Another phenomenon found in the early Chalcolithic is development of new types of funerary monuments. Tholoi, an artificial cave. These are found in more developed areas, southern Iberia, from the Tagus estuary to Almeria and southeast France. Eventually, circa 2600 BC, urban communities began to appear again, especially in the south. The most important ones are Los Maleres in southeast Spain and Zambugal, belonging to Vila Nova de São Pedro culture, in Portuguese Extremadura, which can be called civilizations, even though they lack the literary component. It is very unclear if any cultural influence originated in the eastern Mediterranean would have sparked these civilizations. On one side, Tholos does have a precedent in that area, even if it's not used as a tomb. But on the other, there is no material evidence of any exchange between the eastern and western Mediterranean, in contrast with the abundance of goods imported from northern Europe and Africa. Since 2150 BC, the Bell Beaker culture intrudes in Calicolithic Iberia. After the early corded-style beaker, of quite clear Central European origin, the peninsula begins producing the types of Bell Beaker pottery, most important in the maritime of international style, associated especially with megalithism, is for some centuries abundant in all the peninsula and southern France. Since 1900 BC, the Bell Beaker phenomenon in Iberia shows a regionalization with different styles being produced in the various regions. Palmela type in Portugal, continental type in the Plateau, and Almerian style in Los Maleres, among others. Like in other parts of Europe, the Bell Beaker phenomenon, speculated to be the trading or maybe religious nature, does not significantly alter the cultures it inserts itself in. Instead, the cultural context that existed previously continue unchanged by their presence. Thank you for watching. In the next episode, we will talk about the Bronze Age Iberia. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Share it, tell your friends, do whatever you can. Check out our website, www.eatmyownbeat.com. We're on Facebook, Eat to My Own Beat. We have a Twitter account, Eat to My Own Beat. Follow us on most social media sites. We will have our podcast up on iTunes probably tomorrow once we get approved. It'll be on Spotify, all the other places you can get it, so keep checking back. We'll have more things. We'll have interviews. We'll have more shows. We'll have tips, travel tips, tourism stuff, history, all this stuff. We're going to be talking more about Portugal, talking about traveling around the world, and more. So just keep checking back, and thank you for listening.